No matter where you go in a fandom, you're bound to find argumentative and combative types. And just like polite conversation, there are certain things you don't really bring up unless you really want to start a fight. Don't ask a Star Trek fan about the Kelvin timeline.
No, Benedict Cumberbatch, or whatever his name is, alright, it's not Khan.
Yeah. Don't mention Zack Snyder in the same sentence with DC. Don't bring up Civil War II and how it affects the Marvel comics. And just don't ask a Star Wars fan about anything from the past 20 years. And you know what? Same thing is true with Transformers fans. There's an entire article on TFWiki all about it. And one of the smaller nitpicks that will always bring up fan ire is something from the very beginning: scale. Look, Transformers are alien robots from space that can turn into things, whether that's a sports car or a handgun. Obviously, in media like comic books, TV shows, and movies, you can do some hand-waving away and explain these inconsistencies with great visuals. It's easy to ignore in that respect. However, with toys, you actually have to take this robot and physically turn him into this object, and that can bring up some issues. It's all relative to each other. In a toy line, a robot mode can be too big when compared to others, or too small. And when you take vehicles into account, the whole thing goes out of whack. So from day one, scale was already wonky. And then you add in the city bots. These are gargantuan transformers in fiction that turn into very literal cities or battle stations. In modern nomenclature, we would call these the Titan figures. The fact that these toys turn into cities makes them difficult to scale when compared to their contemporaries. However, despite this, time has been kinder to the G1 city bots than most others. Over the past few decades, Hasbro, Takara, and other companies have put out tons and tons of small-scale Transformers figures. And while not intended to be paired with these city bots, they do pair very well. The first city on the block to attempt a small-scale play pattern was the Autobot Fortress Metroplex. Metroplex was released all the way back in 1985, and I'd argue that he is the first city bot to use the small-scale play pattern that we know by modern standards. Not that Omega Supreme doesn't count, however, he is more of a self-contained unit with the motorized tank, and he was borrowed from a previous non-Takara toy line. Metroplex has a fairly striking silhouette, with a blocky and imposing form accented by a chic high-contrast color scheme of black, white, and red. Some of my favorite details on Metroplex are the large antenna towers on his shoulders, as well as the black and yellow window details. These details, along with the large and blocky silhouette, and the face that looks like it's a chiseled relief, give the impression that Metroplex is much more of an architectural design than just your standard robot. Kind of like those Titans from Warhammer. I say that as someone who's never played Warhammer and just likes giant robots. And all of these details on Metroplex go a long way to communicate that gargantuan scale. It does kind of fall apart though as soon as you put him near any of his G1 contemporaries. We'll focus on why Metroplex is incongruous with the other Transformers a little later, and instead we'll focus on his accessories. Much like a lot of early G1 figures, Metroplex does not have integrated fists. Instead, they're separate accessories you have to attach in robot mode. Metroplex actually has quite a few modular accessories, with one of the con towers on his shoulders being removable, as well as the two large black guns on his shoulders. Metroplex also includes two large rifles which look suspiciously like a pair of boots. Put a pin in that as well, and we'll get back to it later. Does the robot the size of several city blocks need a rifle as long as an office building? Probably not, but the Transformers Civil War is probably one of the craziest galactic conflicts out there. I really like Metroplex's robot mode, due in large part to its sheer monolithic nature. The sculpted details and sticker accents go a long way to communicate that even as a robot, Metroplex is essentially a monument. Metroplex's first alternate mode is referred to as a mobile battle station. However, I like to call it a command carrier, thanks to the two parallel aircraft carrier style runways. While in some ways I prefer the carrier alt mode to the city alt mode, it does lack quite a bit in functionality and playability. Its primary function is to be a mobile launching platform for the Scramble City jets. However, it does look pretty nice when you populate it with smaller scale figures, whether that be the Transformers Keshi from back in the day, or modern small scale toys. This is what I mean by time has been kind to the city Transformers. Over the past few decades, Hasbro and Takara have developed full small-scale ecosystems for their modern toys, whether that's the early Micromasters, Minicons from Armada, or the Titans Return Headmasters. And in addition to that, you can even pair him with other small-scale vintage figures like Machine Robo. They might not have been intended to play with each other, but an SR-71 Blackbird on a cyberpunk aircraft carrier looks pretty damn cool if you ask me. The modularity of Metroplex's accessories continues here. Obviously his fists have been removed for this mode, however the large white antenna towers have been moved to be in conjunction with the black guns on his shoulders to form large forward-facing cannons. The large red antenna have also been shifted down to become cannons, and his knee pads have now been turned into canopies for aircraft. Now before we get into city mode proper, we're going to take a quick look at how extensively modular his accessories actually are. If you take off all of his rifles, which is to say the large black rifles on his shoulders, as well as his large red rifles, and then combine them with this red and white tower from his city mode, you can form a new figure. This is Six Gun. Six Gun is a little janky to say the least. He's literally made up of guns. That's why the large red rifles for Metroplex look like a pair of boots. He has very odd proportions because of this, and the central block of robot components that form his torso and head are completely unpainted, leaving all of the detail obscured. And if you thought having rifles for arms was a little overkill, he includes a little pistol, just in case. The next part of Metroplex's posse is Slammer, a little gray tank who unfortunately has no robot mode. He's about the size of a mini-bot, and he turns into part of a skyscraper for Metroplex's city mode. The most realized companion for Metroplex is Scamper, a little black future space car with big old jet boosters on the roof. Much like Slammer, Scamper is about mini-bot size in alt mode, but unlike Slammer, he has a robot mode. Flip down the hood, remove those jet boosters and put them back on as arms, and you've got a very, very stark black robot. He has very minimal details, but he does present well, as he has this classic visor look that gives him a drone appearance. And much like Six Gun, he has an itty-bitty pistol of his own, which is extremely easily lost. This is the most lost part of Metroplex. We've reached the final mode of this toy, which is quite literally its namesake, the Metropolitan Complex, the city mode of Metroplex. This is where form meets function, as Metroplex was originally designed for the Diaclone toy line. After the success of Diaclone's car robots, a subline was planned called Jizai Gatai, or Limitless Combination. This toy line would have focused on teams of smaller scale figures that could combine into a larger robot. They would all have a universal interlocking system, as well as a large base that they could launch off of. However, with the success of the integrated toy lines of Micro Man, Micro Change, and Diaclone as the Transformers, Takara would scrap the Jizai Gatai combination system and reuse it for the Scramble City combination system for the 1985 and 1986 Transformers toy line. This is why all of the Combiner team leaders, Hotspot, Silverbolt, Motormaster, and Onslaught have base modes, as they were meant to pair with and integrate into Metroplex's city mode. In addition to that, Metroplex also has connection points on his shoulders and knees for the limb robots. So all of these designs, the Stunticons, the Aerial Bots, the Combaticons, and the Protectobots, were all made with a modular play pattern in mind, with Metroplex as the centerpiece. Out of the major city bots, even compared to Fortress Maximus, I would say Metroplex actually has the most realized city mode. So while Metroplex was explicitly designed for the Jizai Gatai and then Scramble City style combination system with small scale figures, he has the ability to integrate very well with modern small-scale figures. It doesn't matter if it's Titan's Return, or Keshi, or any kind of small-scale toy like even the Micro Galaxy collection from Star Wars, they all look really good when you populate his city mode and his command carrier mode with them. Metroplex is the first and the best of the city Transformers. He paved the way for the future Titans, and is pretty much the model in which they're all based on. When you compare him to his contemporaries, Scorponok, Trypticon, Fortress Maximus, even Grandus, he has the most realized base and city mode, as well as the one that has the best integrated play features. He is the most realized base Transformer of the Generation 1 era, and still holds up to this day. Just ignore the scale issues he brings up.